goodies that were listed that the president was able to bag from that official trip, historic trip to the United States of America. And Honorable Speaker, because we are discussing the issue of IBC, I must mention that in one of those goodies, I saw that the president was able to bag 198 million for the reforms of IBC. Honorable Speaker, that was good enough. Whatever you get from elsewhere is a plus. But as a nation, Honorable Speaker, we must invest more in IBC if we want to get the desired results that we are looking for as a country. Because as IBC is reformed, in the many ways that we'd like it to be reformed, Honorable Speaker, all of us must take note that IBC is some skeleton, a skeleton commission, but running elections everywhere. We must not only look at the reforms of IBC at the national level. IBC has structures at the counties, sleeping structures, Honorable Speaker. I call them sleeping structures because those are offices that only run when elections are about. We must be able to see offices that are active, overseeing electoral activities that are not only limited to elections alone, because our people need to be served in those offices. We must see vibrant election IBC offices at the constituencies. We must also see there's nothing that stops even IBC from devolving their offices to the ward levels. Honorable Speaker, I support this amendment, and I want to say that as a country, we must invest in full and progressive reform of the IBC so that we get results, we get the output that is desirable to Kenyans. Honorable Speaker, I support.
Thank you, Senator Beatrice. Senator Cheptumo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the IEBC, as we all know, is a very important institution in the management of our elections. And Mr. Speaker, in every election there has been issues about IEBC. The commissioners, the management, and so on. And Mr. Speaker, any attempt to reform, any attempt to improve the efficiency of IEBC, Mr. Speaker, is welcome. And I think this is the exact reason why the NATCO team was able to pick up this issue. And Mr. Speaker, it is our moment as a country and as a house to do the right thing. So that, Mr. Speaker, going forward, we will not be lamenting every election year that we lost elections because of the composition of the commissioners. We lost elections because of elections law, and blame everything for what is happening, Mr. Speaker. So these proposed amendments to the Act, Mr. Speaker, I submit are very, very important because then it will strengthen the operations of IBC and ensure, Mr. Speaker, that we have efficient elections in terms of having better laws. Mr. Speaker, if I read the objectives of this bill, the objectives that were quoted, Mr. Speaker, are very, very important. And allow me, Mr. Speaker, to just refer to that part of the objective of the bill. Mr. Bill, the bill seeks to enhance transparency. Transparency is important because then, Mr. Speaker, it removes the doubts about our institutions of governance and of elections. It seeks to enhance efficiency and accountability in electoral process. The bill seeks to make the Commission's appointment process more inclusive and transparent while ensuring continuity and stability within its administrative structure. So, Mr. Speaker, the bill is addressing not only the commissioners, but also the administrative structure of the Commission. Mr. Speaker, I will address only two areas of this bill in my submissions. And Mr. Speaker, the first one is the issue of the selection panel. Mr. Speaker, I want to inform the House that the current selection panel, as constituted, Mr. Speaker, I participated in this law when I was the chairman of CHILAC in the National Assembly. And Mr. Speaker, if you read first schedule of the current law, the current IBC Act, Mr. Speaker, if you look at the membership of the selection panel, and this is the law that we passed that time in National Assembly, the membership is 4 persons, being 2 men and 2 women nominated by the Parliamentary Service Commission. Those are 4. Then 1 person nominated by the Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops. 1 person nominated by the National Council of Churches of Kenya. 1 person nominated by the Supreme Council of Kenya Muslims. 1 person nominated by the Evangelical Alliance. And finally, 1 person nominated by the Hindu Council. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the composition of that panel, it is almost 90% religious groups appointed. And I think, Mr. Speaker, the current change of the institutions to nominate the selection panel, because in this bill, Mr. Speaker, we see in clause 9 of the bill, because that's the one I want to deal with now, that the membership of the commission, of the selection panel, shall be appointed by a number of institutions, which is a complete departure from the previous religious organizations. That's now we have 2 persons nominated by the Public Service Commission, 3 persons nominated by the political parties, liaison, and so on and so forth. It is only 2 members nominated by Interreligious Council of Kenya. So, Mr. Speaker, we have reduced the number of members to be nominated by the religious organizations to only 2 from the previous 5. Mr. Speaker, then we now have the LSK. LSK, Mr. Speaker, is a very important institution, and I'm supporting the fact that now at least LSK can give us 1 person in the selection panel. Members, Mr. Speaker, have already submitted here that there is need to relook at the Parliamentary Service Commission, giving us 2 people, and even for the political parties liaison, issues have been raised about whether they're credible enough to be able to do that. And I think, Mr. Speaker, this conversation is important. So, Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to say that having been the chair of CHILAC and passed a law that is in the current act of the IBC, and now being in this House, again, seeing the departure, I think, Mr. Speaker, it is a good move so that we don't have a lot of members of the selection panel from religious organizations to a large extent, because there were 5 out of the 7. Mr. Speaker, I've also seen the increase from, because that is what the law, what this law has done, is to increase the number from 7 to 9. Again, I think it is also a plus because it is widening the scope of the institutions that are going to give these members of the selection panel. Mr. Speaker, the other progressive issue about this is, if you look at part 3 of that particular section or clause, the bill says the respective nominating bodies shall select nominees for appointment through a competitive and transparent process. Mr. Speaker, it is okay to have members of selection panel. But, Mr. Speaker, the process of identifying those members in terms of their capacity, in terms of their expertise, in terms of their exposure, in terms of the knowledge, so that, Mr. Speaker, when we have a selection panel, we don't have members who are just picked from nowhere. I support this provision or proposed amendment because, Mr. Speaker, that was not in the previous law, or that, the current law, which we passed when I was in the National Assembly. So, Mr. Speaker, it is important that we have a process. I believe there will be some advertisement, members will apply, giving the qualifications required, and I think, Mr. Speaker, these are very, very progressive proposals. 2C, Mr. Speaker, and I'm saying this because, Mr. Speaker, as our chair, my chair of the CHILAC, these are matters you really took us through and we were able to discuss. The respective nominating bodies shall ensure that not more than 2/3 of the nominees are of the same gender. What are we doing here, Mr. Speaker? Again, we are again becoming progressive, ensuring that the membership don't have a problem of gender. Mr. Speaker, the problem of the gender parity has been a big problem in the country. And, Mr. Speaker, the Constitution is very clear. But how we have been able to fail as a country to achieve, it has been a serious problem. And I think, Mr. Speaker, by these kind of provisions, we will be able to achieve some of these gender, the 2/3 gender rule in our institutions of governance as we work on the bigger dimension of that issue. So, Mr. Speaker, on the aspect of selection panel, I want to support and say that this is very progressive, and I want to hope that all the institutions that will be able to nominate members of selection panel should be able to follow the law so that we have good members to serve in the selection panel. Mr. Speaker, a good selection panel will give us good commissioners of IBC. Mr. Speaker, my second point, so that I also give my other colleagues to proceed, is the electoral boundaries, delimitation of electoral boundaries. That is under clause 7, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is a very important amendment Because for the first time, we are able to guide the IBC on what to consider. Of course, Mr. Speaker, the Constitution has given the general framework of what IBC should consider in doing the delimitation of boundaries. But I think this law is guiding it even further. But Mr. Speaker, this should be done because we were told by the mover, Mr. Speaker, that we have 15 wards without MCAs. Meaning, Mr. Speaker, constitutionally, they have been denied their constitutional right of representation. Mr. Speaker, one constituency without an MP, and we have 40 protected constituencies. Mr. Speaker, Baringo, we have one constituency that is protected, Mr. Speaker, that is Mogotio. And Mr. Speaker, we are not prepared at any moment to cede and to lose that constituency. Mr. Speaker, that is something missing in my view in this particular law. So that, Mr. Speaker, the law should have been able to provide a framework on how these protected constituencies, Mr. Speaker, are going to be protected. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to really agree with this proposal. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, if you look at that article, that's clause 7(6), the parliamentary committee shall within 14 days of receipt of the revised preliminary report table the report to the National Assembly together with the recommendation. 7, the National Assembly shall, within 14 days of the tabling of the revised preliminary report, consider the report and forwards its recommendation to the Commission. And 8, within 14 days of the expiry of the period provided for, the Commission shall, upon receipt and consideration of the National Assembly and representation from the public, prepare the final report for publication in the Kenya Gazette. As you rightly, Chair, in our report, as Chairlag raises issue, subclause 6, subclause 7 and 8 is deliberately, Mr. Speaker, removing Senate in the entire process. And yet, those units of the electoral units for the wards, for constituencies, falls under counties, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to agree with the proposal by the committee, our committee, Mr. Speaker, that wherever there is National Assembly in that particular sub-clauses, we replace with Parliament, because Parliament is National Assembly and the Senate. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to conclude by saying we are glad as a House that this is our moment. We need to take up these issues. And for the elimination of boundaries, Mr. Speaker, that is an area which I'm very keen. Mr. Speaker, my county, we have 6 constituencies. And Mr. Speaker, and they are very fast. Theater, Mr. Speaker, is actually more than a half of Baringo County. And Mr. Speaker, Mogotio, that time had a low population. I'm very sure by now it has been able to attain the requisite population. And Mr. Speaker, those of us from counties where we have protected constituencies like for me in Baringo, Mogotio, Mr. Speaker, that is an area we are going to ensure that we amend this law so that, Mr. Speaker, we have our constituencies protected. Mr. Speaker, I support.
Thank you, Senator Cheptumo. Honorable members, you will note that I gave preference to the Honorable Senator Cheptumo to give his submissions, considering the fact that he was in this post. I will then allow Senator Ojenda to contribute his motion.
Mr. Speaker, I will be very brief. I can come to the Mr. Speaker, I will be very brief in supporting the National Assembly bills, Amendment Bill 2024 to the IBC, Mr. Speaker, for a number of reasons. Mr. Speaker, number one, the question of delimitation of boundaries under Article 89(5) of the Constitution is governed by time frames. And it is not in doubt, Mr. Speaker, sir, that it is time that a boundary review be undertaken in this country so that the 290 constituencies can be reviewed and the wards that we have in the country can be reviewed so that new boundaries are set. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is clear that boundaries either through all boundaries, Mr. Speaker, at the focal point of devolution. They define, Mr. Speaker, sir, matters of employment for the population. They define allocation of monies for purposes of budget, and therefore it's an important function that must be undertaken. Mr. Speaker, sir, thirdly, wards are important for the functioning of counties. In my own county, Kisumu County, we have 35 wards, and many of those wards should be up for review. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to address another question, Mr. Speaker, sir. Of the 35 wards, there are wards that are like constituencies. North Nyakach ward, for instance, should be a constituency, and I believe the boundaries review processes that will invite views will find that some of these wards need to be divided so that we have more wards. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, sir, and I want to address my county, Kisumu. We have constituencies that need to be split into further constituencies. Kanyagwal constituency has not been formally made into a constituency because of the need for this process. And that is why I support this process. Kisumu East constituency has a population that would ensure, Mr. Speaker, that it is split into two constituencies. Kisumu Central constituency, Mr. Speaker, sir, has over 200,000 voters, also needs to be split into a second constituency. Mr. Speaker, sir, the framework under Article 89(5), 89(6), and 89(7) of the Constitution is timeless and should be exercised as the Constitution defines. On the question, Mr. Speaker, sir, of the inclusive panel proposed by the increment of the panel from 7 to 9, I support the finding of the increment as set out in the NADCO report. Mr. Speaker, sir, the representation of the Law Society of Kenya is key in this panel because I know, Mr. Speaker, sir, that as chair of the Justice Committee, you have spoken to it, that we need the Law Society to be incorporated in this panel so that they guide the legal question beyond the political in the selection process of the commissioners. I'm sure, Mr. Speaker, sir, that commissioners of IBC should be able to deliver so that we do not, in every 5-year cycle, review or amend the IBC Act. All amendments, Mr. Speaker, sir, to the IBC Act should be amendments that have longevity and that go beyond the momentary interests of politicians serving in a parliamentary cycle in 5 years. So that is why I support some of these amendments, because they give life to the democratization of IBC. The choice of a secretary for a term of 4 years, renewable, Mr. Speaker, sir, is a term that speaks to an IBC that can deliver, and an IBC that does not hold elections. And after holding the elections, Mr. Speaker, sir, we have a month or two of maandamano. We do not want to see that again happen in this country, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, these amendments, as we support as Senate, and as we second what the National Assembly has done, Mr. Speaker, sir, should be undertaken without a political framework. I am alive, Mr. Speaker, sir, to the fact that there are wards that need by elections to be undertaken. I'm alive that the IBC has not had quorum. And that is the reason, Mr. Speaker, sir, that a quorum of 5 as proposed by a clear act, because in the last election petition cycle, we had interpretation questions. And Mr. Speaker, sir, I speak for the IBC because the IBC is my client. And therefore, I'm alive to the several legal questions that we have had to litigate. And when law comes to straighten out or to clear these questions that have been the subject of litigation, then I can only support Mr. Speaker, sir, both as a member of this House, as an advocate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you, Professor Senator Tom Ongenda. Senator Omar Sheikh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I also stand up here to support the bill. Mr. Speaker, this is one of the ADCO report recommendation. The recommendation of ADCO is there is amendment of almost 9 legislation, and one of them is IBC. Mr. Speaker, if this amendment go through, there must be so many improvements of the operation of IBC and also enhancing the transparency and efficiency of their work. Mr. Speaker, on the amendment, there are almost 8 of them. One is out of them, there is composition of the commission, which the amendment is about the number of the commissioners and qualification and disqualification of the commissioners and their terms in the office. Mr. Speaker, as per this, there is a constitution, there is when we lost an MP from Banissa constituency lack constitutional rights because of the gap of this amendment, which almost a year they are lacking constitutional right. When we amend this one, they might, and we will get their constitutional right. Mr. Speaker, the other amendment is about selection process. Mr. Speaker, on this, it is touching on process of vetting of commissioners and the role of the president and the parliament in this case of selection procedures. Mr. Speaker, also there is operation of the framework of the IBC. Mr. Speaker, this one touches on the role and the responsibility of the IBC. Mr. Speaker, we are in 21st century, and we are not supposed to use, we're supposed to use digital system because we have to change our technology of how to operate election. Mr. Speaker, it also touches on voter registration, how to improve registration of voters, and provisions of updating the voter materials and registration. Mr. Speaker, it also touches on amendment touch on also election conduct, how we have conducted our election. It will be, when we pass this amendment, it ensures that there is free and fair and credible results on elections. Mr. Speaker, in the composition of commissions, there is a nominee from ISPAC that automatically show there will be accountability, which will be auditing and the review of the activities of IBC. Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Omar. Senator Abbas.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I stand to support the bill, the amendment bill. As you are aware, Honorable Speaker, Kenya has experienced a lot of problems in terms of, election times. In every cycle of election, this country experiences a lot of problem. As a result of, especially the time of, announcing results, final results, there's a lot of discontent, and many Kenyans have lost their lives as a result of, wrong judgment or wrong information. At the same time, because of, boundary issues, and therefore I'll say that this amendment actually is timely. One thing you should know is that, as Honorable Mariam said, I think there is still lacuna in these places. That by the time the commissioners' term were over, the previous commissioners, I think there were a lot of gap that was created. We have constituencies today which have no representation in terms of parliamentary member of parliament. There are many wards that don't have the representation, the MCS, and therefore the bill is still silent on those kind of things. In the absence of the commissioners, I think it will be the right thing to allow either the CEO and the team to conduct the elections, or they form a kind of an ad hoc representative of the commission. So I think we also need to think, see how best we can include those things. One other thing is in terms of the boundary delineation. As you're aware, I think boundaries in this country is so emotive, and at times of elections, there is a lot of disorder. You will see, what do you call the place where the elections take place? Actually, there's a lot of mix-up of the polling stations. You'll see a polling station in one constituency, but the same constituency maybe have another polling station, and in another constituency, which they call it, what do you call mobile stations. This has also been a big problem, and it causes a lot of confusion. You'll see in one station, there are two polling station, places. That is, see, in one school, you have a polling station for one constituency, at the same time for another constituencies that in the neighborhood. I think we know to correct those anomalies. One other thing is, Honorable Speaker, I am not in agreement with the reducing of the term of office from 5 years to 4 years. I think the institutional knowledge is very important, and this is, an institution that needs to have a lot of knowledge, a lot of records, and I think if we do it, if we reduce the term of office, that will not be able to, at least we will be able to create a gap. One other thing is, Honorable Speaker, you are aware that this country, when the 2010 Constitution was done, that was actually to have a united of Kenyans, that people, the minorities and the majorities all will have a right. But however, up to now, the minorities have been forgotten. There are people up to now who don't even know what an MP is. Maybe they just hear it. They only vote without any knowledge of what their rights are. There are no awards. And therefore, this business of protected constituencies, it's either that the constituencies should boost up their population, or we reduce the number of population required, the threshold for constituencies, so that we can be able to remove any protected constituencies. I will suggest that at least the minorities like the Elmoles, the Narashas, the Ogegs, needs to have a representation in this country. They're so disadvantaged, they're forgotten, and some of them don't even know about what the governance is, what the government is. And therefore, some of these protected constituencies should be given to the minorities, like the Elmoles and the Narashas and all these people. These people have never had a representation in the national government, the national parliament. Or else, Every time we give a nomination to minorities and gender and all these things. But we see the same minorities come from the majority also. You see, a member of parliament, the senator, the nominated person, the ward rep might be coming from a larger community, but in the name of minorities. I think that we need to at least have a kind of regulations that safeguards minority rights. One other thing, Honorable Speaker, is that we need to have also that at times of dispute. At times of dispute, actually, we need to have a proper dispute resolutions committees in place or commissioners, whatever, so that the time for dispute can be minimized. As much as we appreciate the courts are doing very well, but of course, there's a lot of manipulation in the court procedures, and therefore, we need to also strengthen the court issues so that at least we can have a fair and free hearing. Honorable Speaker, one other thing I'm saying is election timelines. You see, in the past, we used to have elections in December. The most appropriate time for elections is actually when Kenyans are relaxed, when Kenyans are free, when the schools are closed. But of course now in August, at times, the people like Northern Kenya were disadvantaged because normally it comes the time of the dry period. In the dry spells, most of the people move out of their grassy areas. They even cross borders to Somalia and Ethiopia and any other part of the world where they can get pastures. And actually, during the elections, you see the voters, the turnout is very poor. And most of the times, people are saying, oh, Northern Kenya has no population. But it's not so. The population, actually, most of them are pastoralists. They go out of the country and they're disadvantaged because they cannot even present their votes. Therefore, the best time now should be, and I support that we also look into the time of elections, and then we revert back to the old days, like the times of December, maybe the second week of second Tuesday of December, so that at least everybody can have time to vote and time for the schools and whatever these things. Honorable Speaker, one other thing is actually the business of saying that the constituencies should be based on population. Well, that's a great, good thing. But of course, there should also be considerations of the few. Because we need to have a united country. We need to have inclusivity. So if everything is said, population is the basis. Our last election in 2019, population's actually figures are so much manipulated. So much. It was actually too biased. And actually some of us still, some of the areas have a case in the court that the figures given was not the right figures for the population of a certain area like Northern Kenya. And therefore, that should not be the basis for elections. One thing, finally, Honorable Speaker, one thing is the issue of saying, the guy is now saying, the proponent of saying that 1 man, 1 shilling, 1 vote. Actually, those who constituted the Constitution of Kenya in 2010, all those who participated knew that we have majorities and minorities. And therefore, everybody was taken care of. But one thing that our friends in Mount Kenya should know is 1 shilling, 1 man, 1 vote, or 1 shilling will not work for this country. We need a cohesive country. We need all of us to have a right to get elected. And one thing is, in terms of taxation, every Kenyan is paying the tax. Those who are multimillionaires are paying tax. Even the mama who sells umboga pays tax. In that, when she buys, a liter of kerosene, she pays tax. When she buys food or rice from a shop, she pays tax. So there's no Kenyan who doesn't pay tax, whether it's directly or indirectly. Therefore, the issue of being arrogantly saying 1 man, 1 shilling, 1 vote, and one thing I will tell you is, for those proponents of saying 1 man, 1 shilling, you require 24 counties for you to qualify as a president. You need 50 plus 1. So if you think that you can gain 50 plus 1 from one region, I think that is exactly you're at a loss. And therefore, we need an inclusivity. We need to work together. We need to work together. See this country to move forward in a sort of taking us back to where we came from. And therefore, with those few remarks, I beg to support the amendment.
Senator Okoiti Andrew Omtata.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to conditionally support the motion because we need an IBC in place, whether it comes through the window or through the front door. We need an IBC in place so that we can discharge the constitutional timelines that are some have been infringed, as Senator Omar has observed, in terms of by-elections for MPs and for wards, members of the county assemblies. But that being as it may, and I support the bill only because of that we should have it in place. But in the bigger equation, or in the final, when I do a proper analysis of this bill, I see that we are again going to fail. The IBC we are going to have is going to be a failure because, and you'll not be alone, because you have seen all our independent commissions have failed in their mandate because we appointed them through ad hoc committees. There's no way an ad hoc committee can produce an independent body. I've never seen it anywhere. I've tried to research across the world. It's only in Kenya that we are trying to achieve the impossible by thinking that we can get an independent organ produced through an ad hoc committee. The issue of commissioners, we need to look at the best practices elsewhere. We cannot assume that we are going to invent the wheel in Kenya. All the democracies across the world, when you look at them, electoral officials are chosen by political parties. The people with a fight, the people who are contesting for power, are the ones who choose people who can sit there and represent their interests and let the contestants checkmate. But to talk of an ad hoc committee doing that, it's impossible. You get something like on the selection panel, religious leaders. What dog do they have in the fight for electoral seats? Civil society, and all these other groups. So I'm seeing this thing primed for failure. We should think of the IPPG way that we succeeded in this country, that gave us a successful referenda and gave us a successful 202 elections. Mr. Speaker, sir, the question of the National Assembly trying to assume that it is Parliament and the Senate does not exist is a very, very serious issue. And I agree with your submissions when you're on this side, that wherever the word National Assembly appears, it should be replaced with the word Parliament. But better still, it could be replaced with the expression National Assembly and the Senate. There's no way an election can be handled through a law made only by the National Assembly. The wards are affected, the Senate itself is affected, we are elected through this law. It cannot be done by the National Assembly alone. They are not our lords. So the Senate must be included, and I would rather be more definitive than what was proposed to use the word Parliament. We have the word National Assembly and the Senate. That is what makes Parliament. Parliament is not made of the National Assembly. In fact, it's a misnomer to refer to members of the National Assembly as the members of as MPs. We are also MPs. Senators are MPs, are members of Parliament. As regards the concerns that Senator Cherargei raised, that if the chairman, Mr. Chebukati, had been kidnapped, what would have happened? That something with a loophole would have come across to allow that. I think the question of bringing the presidential election to Bomas is unconstitutional. There's no provision in the Constitution for having a tallying center at Bomas. If you look at Article 138, Clause 2, it is very clear that the election takes place in each constituency, the election for president, We should have results for each constituency. We should know who has won in each of the 290 constituencies, and then we just get an aggregation. And the people to announce the winners in each constituency are the returning officers. Article 89 is very clear on how to conduct elections. So the idea that you have got a chief, I think the returning officer for the presidential election, is anathema to the provisions of Article 138, Clause 2, and Article 89 of the Constitution. So I hope that we shall have the fidelity to Chapter 7 of the Constitution and begin implementing elections as prescribed in Article 87, in Chapter 7. Even under Article 140 of the Constitution, where you have got dispute of presidential elections, where a petition is given 7 days and the court is given 14 days, I have seen people trying to say that the timeline is very short. Even judges of the Supreme Court have claimed it is very short. But the problem is that they are stuck in brick and mortar. They are thinking of manual elections. But if we are doing digital elections, 14 days are just too long. And I would also want to point out that in Raila 1, the first petition Raila filed, a question came up whether spoiled ballots count or not. Show me where in the Constitution you have got spoiled ballots. You only have spoiled ballots when you have a manual election. But because the Constitution anticipates at fully digital election, there are no spoiled ballots anywhere. So the spoiled ballots become a creation of the Supreme Court, and it's part of how the courts have been mutilating the Constitution through interpretations not anchored in law or fact. Mr. Speaker, sir, there's also the issue that people are talking of the two-gender rule, two-thirds gender rule. I've read the Constitution of Kenya over and over. I've never come across the expression two-thirds gender rule. There's a two-thirds gender principle in Article 87, in Article 27, Clause 8, and in Article 81. So, again, it is the Supreme Court which invents this word gender rule. In the advisory that the Attorney General sought whether what he called the gender rule would apply in 2013 or would apply later. So there's nothing like a gender rule. A rule must be observed. What is in the Constitution is a gender principle, something that we must work towards. There's no obligation that you must implement a principle in this time and space. My friends had asked me to cut my submission short. So there is a senator for Kiambu who would also like to contribute to the bill. I'll be magnanimous, and I'll stop my submissions there. I had a long list of things to address.
Tata, the Honorable Senator Karungu Tango has not made that request. I cannot see that he wants to speak.
Oh, he wants to reply. I think he wants to reply. They want to reply. So I'll terminate my submissions at that stage so that I can allow them to reply. I can see it's almost time. And so, Mr. Speaker, sir, I support the bill, but I know it's going to be another disaster when implemented, but it will enable us to overcome a constitutional conundrum that is cascading towards us, in the form of constitutional timelines that require the IBC to do certain things, including the review of boundaries. With those few remarks, I support Mr. Speaker, sir.
Honorable Senators, there seem to be no other senator who is interested in contributing. I therefore call upon the mover to reply.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Senator
As I
Thangwa.
rise to
Senator
reply.
Thangwa, order please. This particular reply by the Honorable Senator Thangwa is doing it on behalf of the majority leader who was the mover of this particular bill. So you proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As you have rightly put it, as the Senator of Kiambu, I rise to reply on behalf of the majority leader, Senator Cheruiyot, on this amendment bill, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission Amendment Bill 2024. And I start by thanking every senator, Mr. Speaker, who has contributed in support of this amendment, because we all support that we need to have IEBC in place. And for IEBC in place, to be in place, we need to have a selection panel that is supposed to select the 9 commissioners, Mr. Speaker, so that they can start their work in putting in place IEBC commissioners, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the most measurable public participation is an election, the general election. That is when everybody is given an opportunity to participate in their democratic right to select leaders who will represent them in parliament or county assemblies, or who will serve them in different executive offices, Mr. Speaker. By saying so, it means that we need to put IEBC in place as yesterday. Mr. Speaker, there are some pending by-elections, but they cannot happen because there's no IEBC. If you read this bill, Mr. Speaker, it has looked into all the chaos that happened in the elections of 2022, in the just last concluded election of 2022. Because it has, if you look at Section 2 of the amendment bill defines what is a chairperson. Mr. Speaker, it says a chairperson is the person elected as per the Constitution. But if you look at what we are amending, or what it is today, it says that the chairperson is a chairperson, or is a vice chairperson, or any other commissioner who will be acting as a chairperson, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that one is going to cure the Cherera disorder, Mr. Speaker. Because if this clause was there, we could not have experienced what we experienced, that any commissioner can just stand and pretend to be the chairperson and announce the election, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you look at Section 7A, Section 4, that is amending Section 7A, it says very clearly, we are deleting subsection 4 and 5, and the reason why we are deleting that is because they say where a position of the chairperson, when there is a vacancy of a chairperson, any commissioner can be the chair, or the vice chair can immediately become the chair. By deleting those clauses, we are protecting that office of the chairperson, so that we don't have the gameplay like we had last time, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I've heard the Senator for Wajir, Senator Abbas, who is talking about what Mount Kenya is doing when it comes to 1 man, 1 vote, 1 shillings. Also, before I say whether I agree with that or not agree with it, it's also good to let him know that the population of Wajir is bigger than the population of Nyeri. So probably, if that was the case, he could benefit more than those counties in Mount Kenya that he is talking about. Mr. Speaker, the selection panel has 90 days to recruit and forward the names to the president. And immediately after they do that, they self-destruct, Mr. Speaker, self-termination. That is an indication that we don't want to use the public finance to have a commission, to have a panel that can work without timelines. But I'm happy to hear that the Parliament can extend their work if there is need. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude because of time, I would want to say that the constituencies and the wards, when it comes to the delimitation of electoral units, people should be consulted. There must be public participation. There must be everywhere in this in every corner of this country, Mr. Speaker, people must be consulted, because people have started speaking anyhowly, if I can say that, by trying to suggest some of the things that I don't think it is even in their right mind of suggesting, like what NCIC is suggesting. Although we know IEBC cannot change the names of the counties, but they are suggesting that Parliament to change the names of counties, about 10 of them, that they should not go by the names of ethnic groups, Mr. Speaker. NCIC is okay with somebody going to Kenyatta Primary, going to Kenyatta High, taken to Kenyatta Hospital, using Kenyatta Highway to go to Jomo Kenyatta Airport, but they have a problem with the whole county called Embu. They have no problem with one single person, Moi High, Moi Primary, Moi International, Moi Road, Moi Avenue. They have no problem with that, but they have a problem when the people of Embu, who are hosting Moi Stadium, Mr. Speaker, they have a problem that they don't want the people of Embu to call their county Embu. Those are some of the things that we need to discuss, Mr. Speaker. And looking at the time, Mr. Speaker, pass on to Standing Order 66.3. I beg to request that putting of the question be deferred to a later date. I beg to reply. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Thangwa. And the request for deferment of putting of the question is allowed pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 66. And honorable members, rise, please. Honorable senators, it's now 6:30 p.m. Time to adjourn the Senate. The Senate therefore stands adjourned until tomorrow, Thursday, 30th May 2024 at 2:30 p.m.
Of the law, Mr. Speaker, it ended up that the 4 members that were nominated to the selection panel represented only one side of the political divide. And that is what ended up giving us the so-called Cherera 4, Mr. Speaker. And you know the consequences and what happened eventually, Mr. Speaker. In the law, as it is specified today, PSC cannot sit, as was the case previously, and just give us 4 individuals. They must be representative of the majority and the minority party, Mr. Speaker. Further to that, we have provided it because our colleague Senator Umtata went to court on this particular matter and said, though for the very first time I think he agreed with Parliament, that Parliament was the only nominating body to that selection panel that actually did their nomination in a competitive exercise. The rest of the nominating agencies from Public Service Commission, Interreligious Council, LSK, they did it in a way that couldn't be understood. We have provided it and made it specific in law, Mr. Speaker, in various sections of this clauses in this bill, actually, Mr. Speaker, that the respective nominating bodies, we have inserted a new clause 2B, the respective nominating bodies shall select nominee for appointment through a competitive and a transparent process. What are these nominating bodies, Mr. Speaker? I mentioned that the Parliamentary Service Commission, you know for a fact that our colleague here, Senator Mtata, again, went to court on Parliament having 4 members out of 7 members of the selection panel, and the courts seem to have agreed that Parliament had over-rewarded itself. I don't agree with that provision because I don't know of any other institution that represents all shades of opinion than Parliament itself. Because in this House, Mr. Speaker, you'll find the majority and the minority. However, be that as it may, Mr. Speaker, as a committee seated as NADCO at that time, Mr. Speaker, we agreed with that decision and decided that let us reduce the nomination of Parliament from 4 to 2, such that Parliament will only nominate 2 members of the selection panel. One shall be from the majority party or a coalition of parties. The other one shall be from the minority party or coalition of parties, and through a competitive process. That's a consultation that shall be led by PSC. Then political parties liaison committee, Mr. Speaker, a body that brings together various political parties. We have also made provision that they too have 3 nominees in this selection panel, but have defined how each of those 3 are being provided for. 2 of them have to be from parties that, close one. One shall be from a party other than a parliamentary party. Because in the political parties liaison committee, Mr. Speaker, there are many political parties. Unfortunately, if it was left as was the case previously, the non-parliamentary political parties are more than the parties in parliament. I don't want to call them what people normally refer to them as, that they are briefcase political parties. My good friend Senator Eddie Okech will understand them better, because I know previously, in his attempt to come to this house, he has ran on one such political party, Mr. Speaker. They are more than the parliamentary political parties, but we broke it down quite elaborately, that those parties that don't have representation in parliament shall nominate 1, and the other 2 shall be from parties that are in parliament. That 1 shall be from the majority party, the other 1 shall be from the minority coalition of parties within PPLC, Mr. Speaker. Then there's a nominee from LSK, another nominee from ISPAC, which is a body that brings together our certified accountants in the country. Remember, I had spoken earlier to the need to have accountants and people who can do basic addition and subtraction, Mr. Speaker, much as it appears to be too obvious. Then finally, 2 persons that are nominated by Interreligious Council of Kenya, Mr. Speaker. Finally, Mr. Speaker, is just to provide for the dissolution of the selection panel, that the selection panel shall finalize the recruitment exercise within 90 days of its appointment and forward the names of the nominees to the President. Thereafter, Mr. Speaker, Parliament by resolution can extend a tenure of the selection panel for a specified period, if for one reason or the other within 90 days they haven't concluded on their job. The quorum, clause 10, Mr. Speaker, these are just consequential provision, that the quorum for the conduct of business at the meeting of the commission shall be at least 5 members of the commission, and so on and so forth. I don't think there is any other matter for which I need to speak on. If there is anything that I have left, Mr. Speaker, I believe the very able retired Justice Stewart Mazayo, leader of minority, shall be able to speak to the same, Mr. Speaker, in his seconding. With those very many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move and request the Senator for Kilifi and the leader of our minority party in the Senate to second. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mazayo, leader of the minority party, you second the motion.
Asante Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, cha kwanza mimi nataka kuunga mkono hii bill, hususan ambayo inahusu mageuzi ya jopo huru la kusimamia kura na mipaka katika Kenya. Bwana Spika, cha muhimu ni kuzingatia kwamba hii bill ilitengenezwa na kamati ya NADCO na hatimaye ikaletwa katika bunge na tukasikizana ya kwamba ikiwa katika bunge, wakianza bunge la kitaifa, wataleta katika bunge la Senate ili iweze kujadiliwa pia na kukubaliana. Bwana Spika, kwa muda mrefu sana hii nchi yetu ya Kenya imeketi bila kuwa na jopo, hususan la kusimamia mambo ya kura. Na ni jambo la kusikitisha sana, kwa sababu hakuna nchi ambayo inaweza kuketi ikiwa haina jopo ambalo linaweza kusimamia, jopo huru ambalo linaweza kusimamia mambo ya kura. Bwana Spika, katika hii bill mimi naunga mkono sana, kwa sababu iko na mambo mengi ambayo yanaweza kusaidia upigaji kura. Kitu cha kwanza, Bwana Spika, ambacho mimi naunga mkono ni kwamba inaleta mwelekeo, tukizingatia kwamba katika nchi yetu ya Kenya tunaendelea kuwa na population, tunaendelea kuwa na wingi wa watu, na vile vile itahitaji kuona ya kwamba katika huu wingi wa watu kutakuwa na mageuzi kidogo baada ya muda, kuona ya kwamba majina na mipaka na maeneo bunge vile vile yameweza kuangaliwa na kugeuzwa. Bwana Spika, nataka kusema ya kwamba katika mwelekeo tunaangalia wingi wa watu ili tuweze kujua ni wodi ngapi zinaweza kuongezwa katika maeneo fulani, ama ni maeneo bunge mangapi yanaweza kuongezwa kulinganishana na vile watu wanavyozaana katika nchi yetu. Bwana Spika, nataka pia vile vile kuunga mkono hii bill, kwa sababu imeweza pia kugeuza na kuangalia ni kina nani ambao wanafaa kuteuliwa kuja ndani ya bunge. Na Spika, bill hii imepeana mamlaka ya kwamba kutakuwa na watu wawili watakaoteuliwa na Parliamentary Service Commission yetu. Bwana Spika, hawa watu wawili itakuwa mmoja atatoka katika chama cha walio wengi na mwingine atatoka chama ambacho ni cha wachache. Bwana Spika, kipengele cha B kinasema kwamba watu watatu watateuliwa kutoka kamati hizi za political parties ama vyama vya kisiasa. Katika wale watu watatu, Bwana Spika, mmoja atakuwa kutoka kwa party ambayo haijapata wingi wa watu katika bunge, na mwingine atatoka katika party ambao ni ya walio wengi ndani ya bunge. Bwana Spika, vile vile
walio wachache, party ni chama, sema chama.
Chama. Asante Bwana Spika, asante Bwana Spika kwa kuniongoza. Vile vile Bwana Spika, mmoja atatoka chama cha walio wengi na mmoja atatoka katika chama cha walio wachache. Na vile vile pia katika hii bill imeangalia na ikaona ikatafakari ya kwamba itakuwa vyema ikiwa chama cha mawakili pia kitakuwa na mtu mmoja watakayemteua. Vile vile Bwana Spika, kutakuwa na mtu mmoja atakayetoka katika chama kile cha public accountants ama watu wale wanaoelewa mambo ya kuangalia hesabu. Bwana Spika, vile vile kuna watu wawili watakaoteuliwa na kongamano lile la watu wa dini. Kwa hiyo Bwana Spika, tukiangalia kwa uangalifu zaidi, tunaona kwamba hii bili ya NADCO ambao wameitengeneza na ikaja katika bunge la kitaifa, ikatengenezwa, sasa imekuwa kama sheria, imekuja kwetu hapa. Naona kwa maoni yangu mimi, Bwana Spika, ni bill ambayo inaelekeza nchi katika mwelekeo wa kisawasawa. Bwana Spika, mwisho inaeleza pia vile vile kuteuliwa kwa katibu atakayesimamia hili jopo. Bwana Spika, huyu ameambiwa atachukuliwa kama katibu kwa miaka 4, isipokuwa isiwe miaka 5. Bwana Spika, ukiangalia sana utaona ya kwamba kuna sintofahamu ndogo hapa, ya kwamba akiwa atateuliwa kwa miaka 5, atateuliwa kwa miaka 4, hali uchaguzi tunafanya kila baada ya miaka 5. Kunahitajika kuwe na maelezo mwafaka. Ni kwa nini tuliona ya kwamba katika ile bili ya NADCO tuchukue mtu atakayekuwa katibu kwa miaka 4 na wala sio 5. Bwana Spika, la mwisho ni kwamba bili hii inaelekeza katika mambo ya kura, na bili hii pia vile vile inaeleza matakwa yanayohitajika kisheria, na mimi ninaunga mkono hii bili. Asante Bwana Spika.
Honourable members, Senator Oburu. Senator Oburu, the chair is upstanding. Just stand where you are. Don't make yourself fall down. Senator Chute, or not Chute, Medu. You know you must be very keen when you are in the house. Yeah? So, Honorable Senators, I propose the question that the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bills number 10 of 2024, be now read a second time. This Oh, Senator Ambu, I was not on record. Senator Ambu, because of the answer.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, the Speaker. The Speaker, I want to first take this opportunity to thank the NADCO committee that came up with this bill, and the fact that the bill has been processed in the National Assembly, and now it is our turn to process this bill. Speaker, I want the majority leader to hear this because it is important, and Senator Morango is engaging the majority leader, and this piece of information is important to the majority leader. I began by congratulating NADCO for a job well done, and recognizing that that team has actually given this country a lifeline. The only thing that team never does, and because now the majority leader is here, and I believe is going to communicate this message to other members of that team, is that there's a team that went before them, called the bipartisan team, which actually broke the ice. We began our meetings at a time, the Speaker, that both sides could not see eye to eye. But we laid a firm foundation on which the NADCO team now was able to operate and come up with several bills that, as I said, have given this country a lifeline. The Speaker, I appreciate the fact that this bill is a product of a negotiated document. And so, yes, there will be room for members to propose amendments, basically to align this bill with the supreme law and the realities of our time, but not to change the core values of the bill. I appreciate that the bill seeks to enhance efficiency, transparency, and accountability in our elections, Mr. Speaker, and our electoral processes. Mr. Speaker, I will go straight to the salient issues of the bill, for which I want to make some very, very simple and straightforward comments. The Speaker, as late as yesterday afternoon, the Senate was debating a motion on the change of standing orders. And one of the issues in that standing order, the proposed changes, was the definition of what then constitutes a parliamentary party in the Senate. So here you realize that this bill, which if passed then will be binding to all houses of parliament, takes the liberty to define what a parliamentary party means. And it says that it's a party or a coalition of parties consisting of not less than 5% of membership of the National Assembly. For neatness, Mr. Speaker, and to align our own standing orders with the law on electoral justice, I would have wished that we would just have borrowed and lifted this provision from the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission Amendment Bill into a standing order. So there is no conflict between what is provided for in the IEBC Act and what we have in our standing orders. As I said, Mr. Speaker, we can only align. Mr. Speaker, I am happy to see that Clause 3 makes amendment Section 6 of the Principal Act and includes the services of ICT personnel and accountants. It's a good thing, Mr. Speaker, but I want to remind the Majority Leader that, in fact, the only time that we are going to get close to where we want to be is not to add more professions into the IEBC, but is to have people of integrity serving in the IEBC. Because even this ICT personnel, Mr. Speaker, I did some basic ICT, and I was told garbage in, garbage out. It's what you feed in the system that determines the outcome of what you get. So in itself, it's not a cure to electoral injustice. Mr. Speaker, I have listened to the Majority Leader on the matter of the term of office for the Secretary to the Commission. And I want to say, Mr. Speaker, I fully agree with the reasoning of the NADCO team and those sentiments as captured in this bill. I would want to read what the report of JLAC to see what amendment they will be proposing on the term of office for the Secretary. But Mr. Speaker, if you ask me, this is well thought out. On the matter, Mr. Speaker, of the review of the conduct of general election by the IEBC, yes, Mr. Speaker, this is necessary, this is okay for quality control, for internal purposes, Mr. Speaker. It's an opportunity for IEBC to engage in self-reflection. It's an opportunity, Mr. Speaker, for the IEBC to carry out internal audit as an obligation of the law. It is an opportunity for the IEBC to establish a functioning monitoring and evaluation team within itself. But, Mr. Speaker, this should not be deemed to say that now that the IEBC will be carrying out their own internal audit, then the report that they give out, of the verdict that they give of their own audit is the final. Because, Mr. Speaker, it is at times it's very difficult for people to objectively audit their own operations. An external eye, an external person to look at the work of IBC would have been necessary. And that's why I think maybe, I don't know whether we have missed an opportunity here to inbuild the services of external credible electoral auditors in the bill as a requirement of the law that within a specific period of time after an election, then there is this independent external body that is supposed to carry out an audit of the IBC election. The Speaker, as I move towards a conclusion of my remarks, I agree and align myself with the sentiments of the Majority Leader on the fact that in matters of delimitation of electoral units, and I like it when the Majority Leader then admits in public and on record that we are in breach of the Constitution, because that's exactly what we have. We are in breach of the Constitution, and nobody stops anyone from moving to court to seek redress on this matter. That is, Mr. Speaker, this proposed law, the IBC, has dealt very heavily on giving effect to Article 89 of the Constitution on the timings for reviewing electoral boundaries. Mr. Speaker, what I don't know, and perhaps at some point the Majority Leader will also give guidance on this one, is why are we always in a hurry to give effect to Article 89 of the Constitution and always so slow and so disinterested in giving effect to the provisions of Article 188 of the Constitution? Because, Mr. Speaker, if a time comes, then it is necessary to review the boundaries of wards and constituencies, then likewise, a time has come that we must review the boundaries of counties. Mr. Speaker, I have seen now one of the duties that have been assigned to the IBC in this act or bill is to review the names and boundaries of constituencies, which is fine. But, Mr. Speaker, because we are not assigning county responsibilities to IBC, now I have seen that the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, Mr. Speaker, Senator Medo and Senator Cheruiyot, are in breach of the orders of the Speaker yesterday. Just protect me from those two.
Bring the House to spin. What did the Speaker say?
Mr. Speaker, the chair, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, thank you for that opportunity. The Speaker yesterday, Mr. Speaker, in communication from the chair, pleaded with us members that we must conduct our business with decorum.
Senator Mohamed Faki, reason to what
it's exactly the same thing that the Speaker was saying yesterday, Mr. Speaker. We have turned this House into nearly a marketplace where people come in and instead of following debate and contributing to debate, they transact other personal businesses. They are always on phone. That's the communication with the Speaker yesterday. In fact, the Speaker said that we should not push the chair to a point that he may have to rule that there will be no phones allowed in the chamber. Now you can see a lot of people, including my sister, are already on the phone. Mr. Speaker, the import of that communication yesterday was that we receive guests. I've been asked to communicate something, I'm just communicating. Yes. So we receive guests in this house.
That you're eating on your time, of 20 minutes.
That's okay. That's okay, Mr. Speaker. I'm okay. Yeah. Gloria, I'm okay. Don't worry about me. We receive guests in this house, Mr. Speaker. And when they see us now, consulting in loud tones, walking on the gangways when debate is going on, speak on the phone like the majority is doing now. They think we are not very serious. That was the communication yesterday, Mr. Speaker. I believe you are properly updated. So, Mr. Speaker, the Speaker was saying, the Speaker, that the NCIC, I saw yesterday, they have actually now gone a step further, and they are proposing a change in the names of certain counties, including your own county, Mr. Speaker, when you sit as Senator of Meru. And the arguments are sound, that we have counties that are named or share names with communities, dominant communities within the boundaries, making it uneasy for other members of other communities living in those counties to also feel like they belong to that county. Mr. Speaker, so I was wondering whether then we have missed an opportunity to assign even an advisory role to the IBC, to this independent commission contemplated in Article 188 of the Constitution. So, Mr. Speaker, when and if it is time to delimit or to review the boundaries of counties, then the IBC should have a role to play.
Senator Nyutu, you are wondering to be out of order, Senator Joe Nyutu. The space behind the chair can be well utilized to make calls and to do other things all outside. So, because I was part to that decision which was made and the communication made by the Speaker, I did ask members to desist from picking calls from the chamber. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I would urge members to give their input to this bill, but of course, the Speaker, bearing in mind, as I said, that this bill is a product of a negotiation. Senator Cherage, those mannerisms form part of the warnings of the Speaker yesterday. Mr. Speaker, I reserve the right to declare my support or opposition to the bill at whatever point in my submission. That is debate 001, So, Mr. Speaker, I fully support the bill and urge members to debate this bill, but also be informed we want to read the report which has just been tabled, a report of JLAC, to see what their thinking is. And I hope that at the end of the day, then we are going to fast track this bill. If there is a bill, Mr. Speaker, that we need to have passed like last year, it's actually this bill, Mr. Speaker. For the simple reason as properly captured by the majority leader. We have people in this country who are not represented in Parliament because the IBC is not properly constituted. If we can finish with this bill and properly constitute IBC, then we can carry out elections in Vanessa and in those wards where there are vacancies for representatives of the people. Mr. Speaker, with those many remarks, I support.
Next is Senator Muma Muyeka. You know, Senator Muma, your first name is almost a one that has been used the last 2 weeks. Catherine.
I don't know whether I can tell Chair to be
I will
in order.
amend
I'm
your
sorry.
name at some point. Proceed and use your minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise on behalf of the Chair, JLAC, to just quickly read out the amendments that JLAC has proposed to this bill.
Senator Kadri Numa.
Yes.
Honorable Senators, you know when the Chair is here and he gives Senators to make or to debate, it is out of so many things that I've given a member, even from this side. I can give even 3 from this side. So when I give Senator Enoch and Senator Catherine from my left, what is the problem with that? You can sit in any side of the house. So nobody should direct the speaker. And I'm a very sober guy who eats mirror and everything, so I'm very alert. Proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair, for that. This personalizing of issues is not very good. Mr. Chair, Honorable Chair, Honorable Speaker, sorry with all the confusion. Honorable Speaker, I rise on behalf of the Chair of JLAC to present the amendments proposed by JLAC so that as members debate, they might want to also contextualize that. And Honorable Speaker, I might request that the Secretariat just print out, it's a one-pager of the JLAC, extract the JLAC proposed amendments from the report and share with the members so that members can contextualize as they speak. So I'll straight away go to the amendments. Mr. Speaker, the JLAC has largely accepted the IBC amendment bill as is, but has proposed some further amendments to actually improve that bill for the sake of the Senate, largely. At clause 2, we have proposed that in paragraph A, which describes parliamentary party as that, where is it? Which describes a parliamentary party or coalition parties to mean consisting of not less than 5% of membership of the National Assembly. We have proposed that we add the words "and Senate," so that we are speaking about the National Assembly and the Senate. That is the proposal that we have inserted in the proposed clause 2 amendment.